Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep today into something really universal, our relationship with work. Whether you're clocking in today feeling fantastic, or maybe you're staring at your screen plotting an escape route. Well, the source material we analyzed holds some keys to navigating that whole spectrum.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, our mission here is to give you a kind of high-impact shortcut to career intelligence. We're pulling out the essential roadmap, really, how to adapt to this rapidly changing job market, how to recognize the true value of the skills you already have, and this is crucial, how to gather the courage, do the research, and make that leap towards a path that actually feels fulfilling.
Right, and we're starting right at the bottom, almost literally. The material really hammered home this distinction between just having a job, something transactional, pays the rent, and building a career, which is more of a journey, something you're invested in. But before we get into the abstract stuff, we kind of have to look at the grime first, because honestly, that's where some of the best lessons seem to be found.
Absolutely. Those initial work experiences, the ones detailed in the research, they're often the most memorable.
Yeah.
Why? Because they teach you things way beyond the actual task itself. Take that brutal college job mentioned, the dishwasher gig. Imagine the heat, the noise, that deafening clatter of metal, endless piles of dirty plates.
Oh, yeah, and dropping expensive plates, that feeling, that job sounds really isolating, just you and the scrubbing. But the deep dive pointed out something critical about it.
Yeah.
Teamwork.
Exactly. That's what's so fascinating. The realization that if the dishwasher wasn't pulling their weight or was slow, the entire restaurant, the chefs, the waiters, the host, it all just ground to a halt. It's a fundamental lesson, isn't it? No matter how small your task might seem, your role is absolutely vital to the whole operation. Without the back of the house, there is no front of the house.
That makes total sense, and it translates up, doesn't it? Then there was the other experience highlighted, working retail. Okay, folding clothes can be kind of meditative, I get that. But dealing with really demanding customers, like the ones who just wreck an entire perfectly folded stack of shirts just to ask if you have a size 12, that's different.
And that taught patience, right? And self-discipline under fire. That ability to just manage your own frustration, keep your cool when someone's being difficult, that's one of the most transferable skills you can possibly get. It's pure emotional control, really.
Okay, so we start here at this ground level. And it really reinforces that distinction you made earlier, job versus career. A job is immediate, it's transactional, it pays the bills today.
Right, but a career, that's a journey. It's an investment of your time, your passion, even your identity. It's built over time, not just found in one go. And as the research pointed out, the modern work landscape has blurred these lines a lot.
It really has. Look at the rise of the specialized gig economy. The material talked about the life of, say, a freelance writer. The upside seems obvious. Amazing flexibility. You set your own hours, work from basically anywhere.
Yeah, but the trade-off is instability. That flexibility, it often comes at a pretty high cost. You're constantly juggling budgets because income fluctuates. You're constantly marketing yourself. You're basically doing the boss's job and the employee's job all at once. And that inherent instability, it demands hyper-adaptable skills.
Yeah.
Which leads us nicely to the next bit.
Yeah, that instability we just talked about in freelancing, that's precisely why the research stresses adaptability so much. The job market is just changing incredibly fast. Think about careers that are totally standard now. Social media manager, data scientist, drone pilot, most of those didn't really exist in a professional way maybe 15 years ago. So the crucial thing moving forward is this idea of lifelong learning and just a willingness to adapt, to reinvent your skill set, to stay relevant. Which brings us straight to this core idea. Transferable skills. For years, we were sort of told, focus on specific technical training, get certified. But now, the material seems to suggest the human element, those, soft skills, they're actually becoming the foundational pillars for future work.
Exactly. The research identified several key ones. Communication, critical thinking, creativity, problem solving, self-discipline. These are just as important, maybe even more so sometimes, than very specific technical know-how.
Okay, wait. I have to push back a bit there. If I'm, say, a structural engineer, my technical knowledge of physics and, load-bearing structures, that seems pretty indispensable, right? Are you really saying my ability to communicate clearly in a meeting is potentially more valuable than mastering those complex technical skills?
Well, the research highlights why they're gaining value. It's because machines are getting incredibly good at replicating and sometimes even surpassing pure technical expertise. But what machines struggle with is ambiguity, nuanced negotiations, real out-of-the-box creativity. So imagine a scenario. Two technical solutions are equally good on paper. Who drives the project forward? It's the person who can clearly communicate the proposal, manage the team dynamics, and critically assess the unforeseen risks. Those human skills, they're the differentiators, the things machines can't easily copy.
Okay. That really reframes the whole value proposition of a resume, doesn't it? But it creates a new problem for someone listening. If I keep changing jobs, trying to find that fulfillment, my career path looks like a messy scribble. How do I build a career if I never seem to stay put?
Right, good question. The key isn't to apologize for moving around. It's to create a cohesive narrative out of it. You have to be able to tell a powerful story that connects those seemingly random dots. So, for example, let's say you moved from marketing, then into sales, and now you're applying for a management role. You don't just list 3 disconnected jobs.
You connect them. You say, marketing taught me deep customer understanding. Sales taught me how to motivate a team to hit targets. And now, these experiences come together perfectly for the kind of long-term strategic leadership needed in management. Something like that.
Precisely. It's all about framing your experience, highlighting the strengths and the growth you got from each transition. You're showing adaptability and learning, not just instability.
Speaking of transition, let's talk about the really scary part, the courage it takes to make a huge leap. The material brought up examples of, highly paid professionals who were just utterly miserable. The lawyer who quit to open a bakery, maybe, or that software engineer who apparently took a massive, 75% pay cut to become a park ranger just because he wanted to be outdoors.
Yeah, for people like that, the goalpost completely shifted. The core focus moved away from just status and income. It became about finding work that truly aligned with their personal values, something that provided real fulfillment. Money is necessary, obviously. But the research suggests the risk of staying stuck in a well-paid job that's crushing your spirit. That risk is actually higher than the risk of making a change.
I believe it. But did the research capture that initial, sheer panic? That software engineer, sure, maybe immediate relief, but going from a 6-figure salary to park ranger wages, that must have triggered massive financial anxiety, self-doubt, all of that.
Oh, they absolutely address that. That initial shift is terrifying. And that's exactly why doing proper research beforehand is so critical. The material really stresses that age is less important than your willingness to learn and adapt. There was that inspiring example of the uncle, remember, worked in a factory his whole life, then at 58 enrolled in culinary classes, started working part-time as a chef, and guess what? His life experience, managing stress, dealing with all sorts of people, that was highly valued in the kitchen environment.
That is powerful. But okay, we need to balance the inspiration with a dose of reality here. We can't just romanticize these big changes. That lawyer turned baker, probably setting an alarm for 3:00 a.m. now. That aspiring chef, spending hours peeling industrial amounts of potatoes, not just, decorating fancy cakes.
Right, and this is where we need to introduce that critical concept of emotional labor. We have to look beyond just the tasks you can see. Emotional labor is the effort it takes to manage your own emotions, and sometimes suppress them, at work. Think about fields like nursing, teaching, even customer service. You're constantly managing the emotions of others. That cost, it's often hidden, but it can lead to profound burnout.
That's a huge point. If the job requires you to constantly be on or absorb everyone else's stress, that has to factor into your definition of fulfillment. So how do we explore these new paths without, going bankrupt or quitting everything cold turkey?
Small steps. Measured steps. The material gave some great strategies. Things like online courses, maybe volunteering somewhere relevant, or starting a really small-scale side hustle, like that example of the accounting professional who tested the waters by running an Etsy jewelry business on the side. Networking is always critical, But the most actionable tool suggested, shadowing.
Shadowing, like following a carpenter around for a day.
Exactly. Informational interviews are good. They give you information. But shadowing, that gives you the gritty reality. Spending a day with that carpenter shows you the physical demands, the logistical chaos, maybe the weather issues, not just the satisfaction of building something cool. It's a really low-pressure way to see if your romantic idea of a job actually matches the day-to-day work.
Okay, so I'm thinking a lot of people listening might feel trapped in those, golden handcuffs. The money's too good, the benefits are solid, but inside, they feel like their soul is slowly dying. What's the biggest risk there in that situation?
The material is really clear on this. The biggest risk is regret. Staying comfortable in a job you genuinely hate feels safe, maybe, but it's a passive risk, and still a risk. To overcome that inertia, you absolutely have to be proactive. And that starts, increasingly, with your digital presence.
That's a really good point. In today's world, what you put online is, well, it's pretty much your new resume, isn't it?
It really is. Employers definitely treat your LinkedIn profile, your professional social media, any personal websites or blogs you have. They see that as your digital resume. It needs to show your commitment to continuous learning. It needs to highlight those transferable skills we talked about. If you claim you're creative, for instance, your online stuff should somehow back that up through projects you share, insightful comments, even just a clean professional aesthetic.
And okay, when you do start putting yourself out there, especially if you're trying to switch fields where you don't have obvious direct experience,
Right.
you will face rejection. That's just part of it. How do the sources suggest listeners handle that inevitable setback?
They really emphasize adopting a growth mindset. Don't view rejection as some kind of personal failure. Instead, try to treat it as immediate valuable feedback. If you can, always ask for critique after rejection. What could I have done better in the interview? What skill gap do you see that I need to fill? That kind of approach transforms rejection from a dead end into a learning opportunity that actually fuels your next attempt.
Okay, so before anyone actually makes that leap, before they draft that resignation email, what are the absolute essential pre-flight checks the research insists on?
Solid foundations are completely non-negotiable. If you're going self-employed, obviously you need a clear business plan. That's table stakes. But really, for everyone making a big change, you need a robust financial cushion. How long can you realistically manage without that steady paycheck coming in? Be honest with yourself. And crucially, a strong support system. Career changes can strain resources, they can strain relationships. You need friends, family, maybe mentors who believe in you, especially when your own self-doubt inevitably starts creeping in.
That self-belief seems huge because this whole journey requires massive faith in yourself, doesn't it? Nobody just finds their perfectly aligned career overnight. But by being proactive, by showing that hunger to learn and adapt, you dramatically increase your value and your chances of eventually finding that better fit.
Exactly. The core message is really holistic. Finding fulfillment isn't just about courage. It requires diligent research, an honest look at your transferable skills, and a fundamental commitment to continuous personal growth.
And it's important to remember, right, that major life change doesn't always have to mean a complete 180-degree overhaul. Sometimes you can reignite that spark just by tweaking your current role, maybe taking on new projects that use some of those hidden skills you have, or upskilling internally, or even finding ways to apply your creative side within the safer framework you already have.
So here's maybe a final thought for you to mull over, taken straight from the materials we covered today. If the opposite of taking a risk is simply staying comfortable in a job that genuinely makes you miserable, what small, really low-stakes step, maybe a pottery class, a basic coding course online, just one informational interview, what small step could you take, maybe even this week, to start exploring a passion you've kept hidden away? Welcome back to The Deep Dive. We've got a really interesting mission today, based on what you, our listener, asked for. How do you actually, navigate a big career change? Or even just explore options without getting totally overwhelmed.
Yeah, overwhelmed is the word. So much advice out there.
Exactly. So we've dug through the research, the stories, all of it, looking for that shortcut, that better way to find work that actually feels, right for you.
And it's less about finding that one mythical perfect job, isn't it? It's more about the how. How do you shift your mindset? How do you go from feeling completely stuck, paralyzed even, to taking real practical steps? That's what we're mapping out today, the strategy behind it all.
Okay, let's jump in. The first big hurdle, and we saw this everywhere, is that pressure, especially like in your late 20s, early 30s, this feeling you have to have your life's passion all figured out.
Oh, absolutely. It's immense.
And the consensus seems to be. Step one is just giving yourself permission. Permission to not know. Is that fair?
Totally fair. It's maybe the most crucial step. That hunt for the one true passion often just freezes people. You feel like you need the answer before you can move, so you don't move.
Right.
It's stuck.
Exactly.
So the sources really stress letting go of finding the perfect job title first. Instead, you focus on the process, on the clues.
So how do you reframe it? What are the better questions to ask yourself?
You get specific. Forget what's my calling. It's too big, too vague. Ask smaller, more grounded questions like, what skills do people actually rely on me for? And what tasks, even tiny ones, genuinely make me feel energized or engaged at work? Focus on the doing, not the dreaming.
That really shifts the focus, doesn't it? From this big, scary quest to more like being a detective in your own life.
Precisely. You're looking for patterns.
There was that one case study, the person who bounced around different jobs, they only figured out they loved teaching much later.
Yeah, that was fascinating.
The pattern wasn't the industry or the role. It was that they always enjoyed breaking down complicated stuff for other people. That specific action.
That action, that mechanism of enjoyment, that's the gold. So for you listening, a really practical tool that came up a lot is this energy journal idea.
How does it work?
Super simple, really. For like a week, just jot down notes, phone app, little notebook, whatever. Don't track what you achieved, track your energy.
Oh, okay.
When did you feel switched on, focused, even proud? What exactly were you doing? Who were you with? Those notes become data points. Maybe you notice you're always buzzing after you solve some tricky tech issue.
Or maybe it's always when you're helping onboard the new person.
Exactly. That points towards mentoring, coaching. It's about finding the breadcrumbs, not the whole loaf right away.
Okay, so you do that inner detective work.
Mm-hmm.
Then what? The next big theme was about action, but specifically small actions.
Yes. Small experiments, they consistently beat big, dramatic leaps in all the successful transitions we looked at.
Side hustles came up a lot. They were described as gold.
Because they let you test the waters without, blowing up your entire life. You don't have to quit your job to see if you actually like coding or graphic design or whatever it is.
Smart risk management.
Totally. We saw such a contrast. The people who succeeded almost always started small. Like the person curious about tech, they didn't just sign up for an expensive boot camp.
What did they do?
Took a free online coding course first, built a really basic little app in their spare time. It was only after they realized, hey, I actually kind of enjoy this frustrating problem-solving process that they started thinking bigger. The tiny app was proof.
Yeah, because we all have that fantasy, right? Marching into the boss's office, quitting dramatically, and walking straight into your dream life.
Uh-huh. Yeah, the movie version.
But the reality is usually way messier. Like that accountant, Tom, who wanted to become a brewer.
Tom's story is brilliant. He hated his job, sure, but he was smart about it. He didn't just quit.
Right. He started small, brewing on weekends.
Yep. Sold small batches at local markets. Learned the ropes, not just the brewing, but the inventory, the customer side, all the unglamorous bits.
Mm-hmm.
And crucially, he kept his day job and saved up a serious emergency fund 6 months' worth before making the jump. That safety net was everything.
And the flip side is that person who quit their stable marketing job on impulse to do graphic design.
Oh, yeah. That was a cautionary tale. They had talent, but no real plan, no portfolio geared towards the work they wanted, not enough cash saved.
And ended up back at a desk job 6 months later.
Right. Feeling worse off than before, probably. Because that kind of failure can really knock your confidence.
So the takeaway is, use the cheap or free resources first. Coursera, Khan Academy, YouTube tutorials, library workshops. Test the interest before you invest serious time or money.
Exactly. If you discover you absolutely hate that free intro to statistics course, well, you've just saved yourself from potentially pivoting into a data science career you despise. That's a win.
Okay, so you've done the self-reflection, maybe run a small experiment. Now you're thinking seriously about a switch. The sources laid out a pretty clear 3-step roadmap.
Yeah, it's straightforward, but effective. First, self-assessment. Really list out your skills, what genuinely interests you, and your non-negotiables.
Like salary, location.
Right, but also work-life balance needs. And I'd add, understanding your ideal work style. Do you need quiet focus time, or do you thrive on constant collaboration and maybe a bit of chaos?
That's a great point. Assessing the cognitive non-negotiables. If you need quiet, a busy project management role might bug you out fast, even if the pay is good.
Spot on. Okay, so step 1 is that deep self-assessment. Step 2 is research.
Actually digging into what the job entails. Reading descriptions, watching day-in-the-life videos.
And talking to real people doing the job. That's key.
And then step 3 is test.
Try it out in a low-stakes way. Take a short course, volunteer, maybe shadow someone for a day or two.
It feels like steps 2 and 3, the research and test phases, are where people often skip ahead, right?
Yeah.
They fall for the idea of a job.
Absolutely. That vetting process is critical. It saves so much potential heartache. You romanticize a career, but you haven't experienced the day-to-day grind.
Like the person who thought event planning sounded amazing because they loved hosting parties.
Yeah, that example was perfect. Sounded fun, creative, dynamic.
Until they shadowed a wedding planner.
Exactly. 2 days of 14-hour shifts, vendor chaos, managing emotional families, 0 sleep. Suddenly, the reality hit. The glamour vanished. They realized they liked the idea of creating an event, but hated the actual operational stress.
That vetting saved them years, probably.
Definitely. So the practical tip here for you is seek out those career auditions. Use LinkedIn, reach out politely. Offer to buy someone a coffee, virtual or real.
And don't ask for a job.
No, absolutely not. Ask about their typical day. Ask what the most boring or frustrating part of their job is. You'd be surprised how willing people are to share their real experiences.
And finding out what you don't want is just as valuable, isn't it?
Half the battle. Seriously, if you shadow someone and realize, wow, I would hate sitting in meetings all day, or this much time in Excel would drive me crazy, that's incredibly useful information. You've successfully ruled something out without a huge commitment. Victory.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit to something trickier. What about when you're actually good at your job? You make decent money, it looks good on paper, but you're just completely drained.
The golden handcuffs scenario. Or just burnout. It's incredibly common.
Yeah, like Rachel in one of the case studies, top salesperson, but dreads Mondays, feels empty. What do you do then?
Well, burnout often hits high performers the hardest because they push through the warning signs. It's not about weakness. It's often systemic.
What are the signs to watch for?
Things like persistent fatigue that sleep doesn't fix, feeling really cynical, detached about your work, maybe losing interest in hobbies you used to love. If that sounds familiar and you're not ready or able to just quit, the first step is often negotiation.
But negotiating for things other than money.
Exactly. Negotiating for stress reduction. Can you cut back on travel? Get approval for a hybrid schedule? Maybe shift a particularly draining responsibility to someone else.
Or even shift your role internally.
Yes, that's a great strategy. If you're that top salesperson, maybe you could move into sales training. Use your expertise differently without the constant pressure of hitting quota. Leverage your skills, but change the context.
I like that mental exercise they suggested. Ask yourself, what would I do if money were no object?
Right, and then the important part, work backward. How could you bring just a tiny piece of that into your current life, even 5%?
Like the person who realized they'd build apps for nonprofits.
Yeah. They started doing a few hours of pro bono coding one evening a week for a local charity. Didn't change their day job, but it gave them that sense of purpose, made the main gig more tolerable. It's like an inoculation against the drudgery.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And the work environment itself has changed so much with remote work.
Huge impact. On the one hand, geography is suddenly less of a barrier. We saw that example of the teacher moving to Costa Rica, tutoring online.
Right. Better cost of living, different lifestyle.
But the flip side is that always-on culture. Your office is everywhere. The boundaries just dissolve.
It's so easy for work to bleed into everything.
Totally. Which is why boundaries become non-negotiable. You have to be intentional.
Like literally setting rules.
Absolutely. Hard rules like no laptop after 7 p.m. or I only check email during these specific blocks. You have to train yourself and sometimes your colleagues. And if you're exploring a field known for intense demands like consulting,
You need to test those boundaries early.
yeah, see if you can actually live with the reality of late night calls or weekend work before you fully commit. Understand the true cost, not just the salary.
Okay, so pulling this all together, with all this change and uncertainty, how do you future-proof your career? What skills really matter long-term?
The sources kept pointing to those so-called soft skills, which are really becoming the hard skills. Adaptability is huge. Communication. Emotional intelligence.
Things AI can't easily replicate.
Exactly. And I'd add critical thinking to that list, being able to cut through the noise, analyze information, solve problems where there isn't a clear roadmap. That's incredibly valuable.
And when you're highlighting these skills, say, in a job search, the advice was to avoid just listing the buzzwords.
Please avoid the buzzwords. Use stories. Don't say, I'm a great collaborator.
Say what you actually did.
Right. I led a project across 3 different departments, marketing, engineering, finance. We had some conflicting priorities, but I got everyone aligned and we delivered the project 20% under budget. That shows collaboration, communication, problem solving, the whole package. Stories demonstrate, adjectives just claim.
Makes sense. One more important area, ageism. It's a real concern for people trying to pivot later in their careers, like that 55-year-old engineer moving into UX design.
It's definitely real. But it's not necessarily a deal breaker if you play it smart. That engineer has decades of experience understanding user problems in a way a 25-year-old likely doesn't. That's an asset.
So how do they leverage that and show they're still current?
It's a few things. 1, target the right places, maybe smaller firms or startups that value deep industry knowledge. 2, build a current portfolio quickly. Doesn't have to be huge redesign, a local shop's website, critique an app, show you have the modern skills.
Okay.
And 3, position yourself as a mentor. Frame your experience as a way to guide younger team members, solve complex legacy issues. Suddenly, age isn't a negative, it's a unique selling proposition.
That's really practical advice. Okay, let's wrap up with maybe the worst career advice we saw repeated in the sources. Lightning round.
Let's do it.
I'll go first. Follow your passion and the money will follow.
Ugh. Terrible advice. Passion without a plan, without understanding the market. That's a hobby, maybe, not a career strategy. It needs rigor.
My turn. Stay loyal to one company forever.
Yeah, that ship sailed decades ago. Loyalty today is to your own growth. If you're stagnating, strategic job hopping every few years is often necessary for learning and earning more.
So if someone listening is feeling stuck right now, what's the single biggest takeaway from all this?
Start small, but start. Just do one thing. Send one email to someone in a field you're curious about. Sign up for one free webinar. Take one tiny step. Momentum is everything. Forget perfection. Just get moving. Get that first data point.
And maybe be a bit kinder to yourself in the process. Careers aren't straight lines.
Absolutely. Every twist and turn, even the frustrating ones, teaches you something valuable. You learn what you're good at, what you enjoy, and just as importantly, what you absolutely won't put up with anymore. You're learning with every step.
Okay, that feels like a good place to pause the analysis.
Agreed. So here's a final thought for you to chew on this week. We talked about adaptability being key. If you're actually pretty happy in your job right now, what's one small experiment or course you could take on this week? Not because you need to change, but purely to keep your skills fresh, test your adaptability, and maybe just see what else is out there. What would you learn by spending just a couple of hours exploring something adjacent?
Something to think about. Until next time, keep exploring and keep learning.